Good evening, everyone. I am Angi Shah, an associate for urban development at the Institute for Transport and Development Policy. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you, senior officials, engineers, project management consultants, community partners, and all other stakeholders who have connected to this session on YouTube as well. Welcome to the fourth online workshop for the Streets for People Challenge. So this is a special workshop for this challenge. In this session, we also have design professionals and students who have participated in the design competition that has been rolled out by various cities across the nation. We welcome each one of you and we're excitedly looking forward to receiving your design submissions. So primarily, this session will focus on the steps you need to take towards ensuring that you submit successful design solutions, which are based on the need of the local community and are in alignment with the Streets for People Challenge vision. Yes. So taking a very quick look at the agenda for the day, we'll begin with an introductory address from Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Following that, we will have two presentations of the day. The first one will be on the challenge process and on participating in the walking audit by A.V. Venugopal, Senior Research Associate at ITDP. The second presentation of the day will be on how to make a successful design submission and on the evaluation process by Ashwati Dilip, Senior Program Manager at ITDP. And this will be followed by a Q&A session. So before we jump right in, I would like to highlight a few housekeeping rules for everyone here. Participants and panelists feel free to chat and interact with each other in the chat box throughout the entire session. Please address this chat to panelists and attendees. There's a little option that you can select. So please address the chat to everyone so everyone can see it and interact with each other. Type your questions, however, in the Q&A box. Our team will shortlist these questions and then we'll be answering those in the Q&A session. And finally, if you really like a question, you can also choose to upvote it. This option is present in the Q&A box itself. So keep your eyes out, read all the questions that are out there and upvote the ones you really like. We'll be happy to answer them for you. Next slide, please, Vin. Thank you. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the Streets for People Challenge and all the awesome updates that have been coming in from the cities across the country. 113 cities, including all 100 smart cities, have taken part in this challenge. We have received an overwhelming support from CSOs, professionals, local citizens from across the country. Over 2,300 organizations and individuals have shown support for the challenge, and over 1,400 designers have participated for the cities that have rolled out the design competition. So students and professionals are participating in this design competition, and which is most of you who are here in this workshop today. So thank you for your support and for attending this workshop. 23 cities. So during the course of this entire challenge, cities have been taking up a lot of community engagement initiatives. And 23 cities have initiated the Open Streets campaigns. Essentially, cities are reclaiming road space that was otherwise used by cars and are temporarily closing their streets to vehicular traffic and opening them up for people to thrive in. Activities such as yoga, dance workshops, karate sessions, games for kids, cycling races, and many more take place during these events. So we encourage you to reach out to your cities and participate if there's any open street campaign happening around your city. Yes, and then coming down straight to it, 23 cities have also rolled out the design competition so far, and all of these are available to see on the website. Many more cities are still to roll out their competition, and all of you designers can participate for as many cities as you like, as long as you have a local citizen designer as a part of your team. So we encourage you to collaborate with designers across the nation to transform the streets of India. And lastly, as a very important participatory step in the design competition, cities are requested to conduct walking audits with the participants. So far, we have 9 cities who've already conducted these walking audits, enabling participants to who have joined in to learn more and get more details about the site, eventually to submit deeply contextualized design solutions. So we encourage all participants to take part in these audits as it will definitely enhance the quality of your submissions. Without any further delay, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, to deliver the introductory address. Sir.
Angi, I think Venu, yeah, Rahul Kapoor sir will be joining us in a few minutes, so we can
Sure,
probably
sure.
proceed with the session, and he'll join back.
Okay, sure. Okay. So on that note, I'd like to invite you, Venu, a senior associate at ITDP, for presenting on the participating on in the walking audits. The floor is yours, Venu.
Thank you so much, Angi. Thank you for the lovely introduction and for the updates on the challenge so far. Uh, Hi and good evening to all the participants who are new to the online workshops of the Streets of People Challenge. A big hello also to the senior city officials, nodal officers, and team members from the various cities who are part of the Streets of People Challenge. So this is going to be a very small presentation that I'm going to take you all through. I'm sure that all of us on this call at some point in our life might have cribbed about the condition of streets in probably our neighborhood or in the city itself. It might have been because of heavy rains that flooded the streets and it was difficult to go out. It might have been because of potholes that you faced while you were driving in that street, and probably you yourself or your parents or your uncle or friend was, cribbing about the condition of the streets. It might have been because someone advised you not to take a particular street in the evening or at night because it was unsafe, it was dark, and they strongly advised you, or maybe you had a bad experience. So this has been the situation of many streets in our country. However, over the last many years, there have been beautiful projects across the country, be in Delhi, Bhubaneswar, Udaipur, Chennai, Pune, where the cities have been working to addressing these needs, to create streets that are designed for the people. So this challenge was launched with the intent to further celebrate life on the streets in our cities and to design solutions for these streets along with the ideas from you designers and professionals, students who are right now signed up for the various challenges. The intent of the Streets of People Challenge is basically to make the streets safer, healthier, and happier for everyone. For this, the 113 cities who are signed up for this challenge have been following a test, learn, scale approach. Very simply put, to test is to test the design interventions on the ground through quick, low-cost interventions, what we call as tactical urbanism interventions. Doing this by interacting with the community, the immediate stakeholders, understanding their needs, to test it, to learn from it by understanding the same stakeholders on what worked, on what didn't work, to revise the designs, and then to look at making it permanent and to scale this up across the city. So this is what the cities have been working towards. And as part of the step one of testing is where the pilot design competition is coming in. So the cities are expected to work towards testing one, a flagship public space project, which are areas which have high footfall in them. And number two, a neighborhood, which it can be a mixed use or residential neighborhood, it can be a low income neighborhood, a resettlement colony or so. And I'm sure that all the participants who have tuned in also, you can relate to the various sites that you've been seeing in the competition briefs. Some cities have floated even multiple sites for each of these categories. So the city-led competitions have been launched by 23 cities so far, and around 1,400 plus participants have registered so far. And the primary intent is to crowdsource creative design ideas from all of you to visit the walking audit, which I'll come to in the coming slides, to learn more from the stakeholders and the city on what the challenges from the site are, and to develop the design solution, which will later be tested on the ground. So that is the intent of the design competition. And apart from these 23 cities, many more cities are in the pipeline of launching this competition. For the participants, your journey in this competition can be very simply broken down into four pieces. The first one is to register for the competition. For those of you who might be in one of the WhatsApp groups that the coordinating team is handling, where there are people who are waiting for their cities to launch the competition. So the moment you see your city has launched the competition, the city that you're interested in, you can register for it. Many of you have already registered for a particular city or more as well. Step two is to join for the walking audit. So once you register for a particular city's design competition, the city nodal officer and the city core team will get in touch with you either through mail, call, or WhatsApp to inform you about the next steps towards when the walking audit is, or if they have any additional resources or guidance material or information to share with you. Many cities have already conducted the walking audit, like what Angi spoke about earlier. And in the coming slides, I will stress a little more on the need for being part of this walking audit, because we have been receiving a lot of questions on different platforms on should we be part of the walking audit? Is it mandatory? Can we still be in a different city, but skip the walking audit? There have been a lot of questions that we've been receiving. So the step 3 and 4 is to work towards developing your designs to submit the entry. And step 4 is to participate in the evaluation process, which has a strong community engagement angle to it as well, which will be touched upon in the presentation by Ashwati. Now to the question on why to join for the walking audit, stressing a little more to address the concerns, if any, by any of you participants on the call. The intent of the walking audit is to basically understand the context, to understand the challenges and opportunities that each site has. So each site in any city or any street for that matter in an area will have its own opportunities and challenges that it has. So unless you visit the site at multiple times of the day, the peak hours, the non-peak hours, at different times of the week, you will not be able to observe the kind of challenges, unless you talk to the people who use the space or the shopkeepers, you wouldn't understand the difficulties that they face or their thoughts on how you could improve the space. So the walking audit, the very first one that the city itself facilitates, has added benefits, because by being part of the walking audit that is anchored by the city, you'll get an opportunity to clarify any site-specific questions that you have with the city officials. We strongly urge, like in the collaterals that we have shared, the participants should also visit the site after that single walking audit the city has organized, to further visit the site at different times of the day and different days of the week as well, and to try and engage the local stakeholders and the community as well. So very simply put, it's broken down into 5 pieces. The very first one is to understand the route. Once the city shares the information, the agenda with you, is to be prepared with the checklist, the sketchbook, the maps, and other things that you would want, and to be oriented to the site beforehand. Number 2 is to walk and explore the site. So prior to that, we urge all of you to go through the walking audit checklist that we have shared with all of you, and which we'll be resharing in the chat box in a few seconds. So it encourages you to capture the moments on the site. 1, to help you build your base map. And number 2, for you to observe the interaction of people with the spaces. For you to capture it in your own ways, be it through photos, videos, sketches, or creating maps, whatever works for you. So the intent is to capture what is happening on the site, to inform a base map which will help you in designing going ahead, and also to observe the interactions of the people with the site, which will help you design spaces that cater to the needs of the people and not a design that can be transplanted in any area. And the last piece is of a debrief and a Q&A. So many cities like Vijayawada, Udaipur, and others have been sharing updates of their interactions with stakeholders, which have happened online and offline. And we urge all the cities as well who are going to schedule their walking audits to plan for stakeholder discussions at the site if possible, and also online sessions with the participants. So that's about it. We had received a few questions in the registration form from the participants, and if we have received any during the session so far, we'd love to take them.
Sure, yeah. I can translate the questions over. I'd like to invite Ashwati Dilip to take these questions, please. You can just put on your video. Hi, thank you. Okay, so we have one question about the walking audit, Ashwati. How will we be informed about the walking audit details?
Yeah, so for the walking audits, the city's core team will get in touch with all the designers who have registered for their competition, and they will definitely keep you informed about the walking audit. And you can also write to the city in the email address that has been given in the challenge brief in case you have any clarifications.
Sure, thank you. Yes, so we have been receiving a lot of queries about this. So I hope it's clear now, and participants, you all are encouraged to reach out to the cities via the email ID, like Ashwati has mentioned. There are no further questions on the walking audit for now. So thank you so much, Venu, for that very informative presentation. And we hope that all of you have or will be participating in the walking audits that will be scheduled and conducted by your cities super soon. Okay, moving on. I now invite you, Ashwati Dilip, for the presentation on what all of you have been looking forward to, how to make successful design submissions and the evaluation process as well. Ashwati is a senior program manager at ITDP, leading the complete street strategy, policy, and projects work. Over to you, Ashwati.
Thank you so much, Angi. So, first of all, I'd like to wish all of you a fantastic 2021. And I think this is, it's a really fabulous way to start this particular year to support, our cities transform themselves into healthy and happy cities through the Street for People challenge. And here, I'd like to, congratulate all the cities who have launched their design competitions. And on behalf of the cities, I'd like to express our deep gratitude to each of you designers who've registered. That is 1,200 of you who've registered for the design competition. Now, what I'd like to also let you know is that cities are at different stages as we speak right now. Some of them have already launched their design competitions, and you've received probably even this particular the PDF, which actually had all of this information, and you've been through it. Whereas some cities are just launching their design competitions, and many of the registrants who are on this particular webinar may not have received this information as well and would be seeing it here for the first time. And the idea of this particular webinar was also to know what your questions are. If there are any questions that we can resolve through this workshop, we'd really like to support you in that particular process. So without spending any more time on this, let me very quickly give you the overview of your journey in the Streets for People design competition, and we look forward to your questions. So far, all of you have registered your entry for the design competition. You have joined for the walking audit, or as Venu mentioned here, you will be joining the city for the walking audit in your neighborhoods. You will put together fabulous design entries and participate in the evaluation process. So let's first take a look at the submission and how you would submit your entry itself. So to make a successful design submission, there are 4 steps that we foresee. First, developing a vision, then getting your basic right in the vision when you detail out each component of that particular vision, detailing out the proposal, and finally communicating the proposal. Let's take a look at how you develop your vision. Now, when you think about your vision, we invite all of you to reimagine the future. Do not get held back by the constraints of your site as you see it right now. Set your vision for the site based on the aspirations of your city, of the community that you're designing for. And here is a fantastic example where designers in Seoul were unlimited by the carriageway, which was running, or the elevated carriageway, which was running in the center of their street, but transformed that into a fantastic, about 11-kilometer long public space where now not just all the citizens of Seoul come together, but also tourists from across the world. Now, as you think about this fantastic vision, the next step would be to ensure, you move to the next slide, please, to ensure that we're thinking about this holistically. So here is an example where we'd like to share with you about Karol Bagh, where the pedestrianization of the Ajmal Khan Road has actually led to the reimagination of the entire neighborhood. So we invite all of you to embrace an area-based approach and look at the strategies for holistic planning. So please do think comprehensively. And as you are creating, as you're reimagining the future and thinking comprehensively, ensure that it's very contextual and grounded to your site in your city. So, this is an example of the Amritsar Golden Temple, where the redevelopment reflected the historic design language in the material choice, the art that was used, the sculpture that was used. And this place, because tourists are an important stakeholder, they also kept in mind all of their requirements and provided basic amenities for them. So we request all of you to think in these three components when you design, when you come and set up your vision for your design. Now, once your design is developed, the next important point is to ensure that we get our basics right. So let's move ahead and look at how do we do that. Now, when we are, getting into the details, what should our priority be as we are developing these design solutions? We encourage all of you to put your citizens, people at the heart of your design. And you could do this by thinking about developing a larger network of walking and cycling interventions, identifying segments in your neighborhood or area which can be completely or partially pedestrianized. Now, if you're pedestrianizing the space partially or completely, and even otherwise, it's very important to look at how you manage the vehicular traffic in this area. And last but not the least, in the area, as you're thinking holistically, look out for opportunities to create shorter networks for walking and cycling by breaking the block sizes. And all of this, look at how you can convert the reclaimed space into public spaces. The next slide. So, reinforcing that the reclaimed street, the space that you reclaim from streets, reimagine them as public spaces that bring together people of all ages, gender, physical ability, as well as social economic status. So we will now look in the next slide as how do we reclaim space from our streets to create these public spaces for our people. So as I already mentioned, if there are streets that can be completely pedestrianized or partially pedestrianized, we encourage you to do that. And for that, look at how vehicular flow can be managed. Secondly, when you're working on the street itself, how can we, with vehicular traffic plying on the street, what do we do? The first step would be to ensure that you create a consistent carriageway. And here you can start by beginning in the center line and marking a uniform carriageway and reclaiming the space along both the edges to accommodate the various innovative activities that you think and that you will be coming out in your design solutions. The next slide. As once you reclaim space along the entire length of your carriage, along the entire length of your street, be very clear to also work on your intersections. We can do this by making intersections compact. And this is fantastic because it makes sure it helps in creating efficiency, and it also makes the space very safe for the users in that area. So, you can also look at ways in which this space that has been reclaimed can be livened up. I'd like to reinforce that, other than these two, there are various other ideas to reclaim space as well. So you could look at creating walk and cycle thoroughfares to large campuses or institutions or offices. You can look at how we can create chicanes, and spaces can be reclaimed and used in a variety of different ways. And this we can do by having bollards, planters, traffic cones, for example. And finally, we can also look at filtering traffic in the neighborhood streets by placing bollards, so that the vehicles in that street can actually access the street, but it prevents vehicles cutting through and speeding up on these neighborhood streets. There are various other ways, such as parking spaces also being reclaimed into public spaces, as you can see here, and there are multiple other ways as well, and we encourage all of you to really reimagine what are the different things that you can do in these spaces. Now, once you have reclaimed these space, we would encourage that you design these space for all users, from children to elderly, to economically weaker sections, to the disabled. Ensure that your design is as inclusive, and do that by using quick, innovative, and low-cost interventions. You can use placemaking elements. You can look at how you can reprogram the existing areas and make them lively and vibrant. You can look at introducing new programs as well as enabling campaigns and events as well. Now, as you redesign these streets and create these fantastic public spaces, which can be used by everyone in our city, one challenge that we may face often is one of parking. So, how can we manage? How can we manage parking in the streets that we are redesigning? Now, parking is a local problem. Now, here are a few concerns that you may actually, that you may face as well. Parking tends to be concentrated in a few spots. It can be unorganized and haphazard. You might have an off-street parking facility which is very, very poorly used. The parking itself could be angular, they could be perpendicular, sometimes they could be parallel, and all of this adding to the chaos on your street. And while one side can be completely packed, there might be another side that is totally empty with parking spots not used at all. So what we would encourage you to do is demarcate, distribute, and enforce. So firstly, clearly mark the parking slots for better discipline. So four-wheeler parking, we can go in for parallel parking. The two-wheelers and the cycles can actually be parked perpendicular. We need to identify locations for freight loading and unloading, especially if you're dealing with markets, commercial areas. It's very important for you to ensure that you also keep freight in your mind. Now, as important as marking parking slots is to mark no parking zones. So avoid parking, ensure that you have no parking zones around intersections, pedestrian crossings, as well as bus stops, and distribute the parking along the entire road and avoid crowding in a few spots. An important point here is that no matter what you do, enforcement is at the center of it. So we need to ensure that we enforce as well, and that the city would play a very important role in making sure that that comes together. Now, let's take a very quick look at how do we manage parking. So if you do have an off-street parking facility, it's important for us to encourage people to use that off-street parking facility. For that, the off-street parking facility should be priced lower than the on-street parking facility. So on-street parking should always be priced higher. Now, when parking spaces, when we are parking spaces on street, we need to demarcate our slots and distribute them clearly in the design layout. We also need to ensure that we are providing slots for cycles and auto rickshaws, shuttle services, or shared taxis, for example. And we recommend that for four-wheelers, please use parallel parking, and for two-wheelers, cycles, use perpendicular parking. This would give you an opportunity to reclaim a lot of space on your street for other valuable uses. Next slide. I think there was a bit of a issue out there. Yeah. So finally, I'd just like to say that as you are going into your sites, also ensure that we pay attention to site-specific challenges as well. So if vending is an issue, please do provide spaces for vending, and we would encourage cities to embrace vending management. Ensure that you organize the paratransit services. Waste management is also something that we need to look at how we manage that, and ensure that your designs take into account access to public transport as well as multimodal integration. We have a guidebook that we would be sharing shortly for the same. So just summarizing all of what we've discussed so far, where we encourage all of you once again to reimagine your streets as public spaces by either entirely pedestrianizing it or partially pedestrianizing it, by making sure that your space is consistent, as well as making your intersections compact and designing chicanes. Thank you so much for this that's what we have in this particular part of our presentation. Let's look at if we have any question answers.
Thanks, Ashriti. Thank you so much for that presentation. And yes, we do have a lot of questions on the design related aspects of the design solutions that they have to submit. The first one is from Purvi, who's from Bangalore. And she's asking, how much of these interventions have to be permanent and how much has to be a tactical urbanism sort of intervention?
So Purvi, what we would say is that before we make any intervention permanent, it's very important for us to test, learn, and then scale the intervention into making it permanent. So through this particular challenge, we want you to use or suggest quick, low-cost interventions, which can be tested on the ground, where we can build support of the local communities, and we can hear from them as to what is it that they like about this intervention? Is there anything that they'd like to change, or what are their thoughts? And once we have gotten their feedback, refined our tested solutions, we can look at how we convert this into a permanent solution. Having said that, if you're looking at, for example, seaters, or if there are certain components that you think could be permanent, which can be reused in your in your final intervention, you could do that as well. But we'd like you to be prudent with the resources and look at how you can test your design solution, get this feedback from your citizens, and then look at scaling it up and making it permanent. And we have fantastic examples. So, for example, Karol Bagh in Delhi, or even the Pedestrian Plaza in Chennai, the cities had embraced exactly the same format, where they tested it and then they've gone ahead and also converted into a permanent solution.
Sure, thank you. Yes, test, learn, and scale has been the mantra of the challenge since the start. So thank you for re-emphasizing that. The next one is from Astha Shah, who's from Hubli, Dharwad. She's asking, are we supposed to design only the given street, or even the secondary and the tertiary streets around?
So, Astha, as I explained out just now in the presentation, it's important for us to think holistically. So, imagine that you do have a street that has been given to you, and you're redesigning that street, but do look at the area around which can benefit, or where you can transform the entire area itself. This does not mean to say that every single street would be completely transformed, but if there are interventions that you could do in the other streets that would actually help this design, which would result in a better outcome of your design for the primary street as well, we'd like you to think of a holistic solution. And if there are things that you think could be done in the secondary street, which would add a lot of value, please make those suggestions and ensure that your design is holistic.
Sure, thank you so much. The next one is from Hridaya, who's from Nashik. She's asking how to work in areas with less ROW, and how would you negotiate between the privacy of residents and provide eyes on the streets at the same time?
Sure, Hridaya. So, Hridaya, like, before you start, as you think about the right of way, and a right of way is a challenging issue. But what we would like you to do is that we urge everyone to do your walking audits during different times of the day and night, to understand what the challenges in this particular site are. So if you do have a street with a lesser ROW, for example, maybe you have a narrow street, maybe speeding is not your issue. So you might you could think of various ways in which you can resolve these challenges that you have, but make sure that you walk on those streets, you identify what your challenges are, and then look at how you can make that street safe, attractive, and comfortable for the pedestrians, in ways that you could do by maybe traffic calming elements, or embracing slow zones, or in fact, like if you're making that entire area, for example, a pedestrianized space, you could look at how traffic could be rerouted, and then you can make this space pedestrian friendly and lively. And as you are thinking about these, also think about for example, efficient reorganization of activity. So if you have smaller ROWs, if parking is a challenge, is it possible for you to move the parking to a different space? So think of ways in which we can free up the space and make it comfortable for our citizens to stay in that area, as well as walk and be involved in what functions that you have on that particular street. Now, we've also shared a guide with design tools for neighborhoods and streets with smaller ROWs, and we really urge you to take a look at that. And all of this content is also uploaded on our website. So please visit that in case you haven't had the chance to look at this particular document that we've shared in the past. And now, coming to the question of privacy of the residents and providing eyes on the street, especially if you're looking at narrow streets, most often, there might already be eyes on the street. So, like I said, when you do go on to your walking audit, identify what is the cause of people feeling unsafe in that particular street. Is it because there are some antisocial activities? Is it because there are male dominated activities? So be very clear that your residents are your immediate stakeholders, and speak to them to understand what their issues are. So it's not essential that you need to provide, for example, let's say vending activities on all your streets to make them safe and ensure that there are eyes on the street. So speak to your stakeholders there, understand what the issues are, and then try to provide solutions which would be in line with what even the citizens would be happy to have on board.
Thank you. Thanks for that one, Ashwati. Very well answered and very clearly as well. The next one is so we'll move on to slightly more competition related questions that we have been receiving so far. And the next one is from Nikita Purohit, who's from Mumbai. She's asking that as a part of the design submission requisites, we had requested for a 200-word write up about the design intervention. And so what she's asking is, does this have to be submitted separately or is it along with the list of submissions?
Yeah, Angi, so I think we could come to that. But do you think we could do that like after we do the next part of the presentation where we take them through the competition submissions as well? Do you think that would be a good idea?
Sure. Sounds good. Okay. All right.
I think, are there any more questions, or we could move into the next one?
We could take the next set of questions after the next round of presentation. That's fine. Thank you, Asha.
Thank you.
I'll just present my screen.
Thank you so much, Angi, for for moderating the question answers and keep putting the presentation up as well. So right now, considering that we've discussed about the developing your vision and getting your basics right, we'd like to very quickly take you through how you could best detail out the proposal as well as communicate the proposal to the city when you're making the submission. Next slide, please. So, as we had discussed, in the question answer session as well, when you are developing your design proposal, please do pay attention to the kind of materials that you select. So we would like you to have simple and interesting palette of materials for the tactical urbanism intervention, and which can also be converted into a permanent intervention going ahead. So some pointers to keep in mind would be to utilize local materials, respond to the local aesthetics and character, see if you can reuse and recycle materials at a low cost, check the durability of your materials, and prefer materials that are easy to implement and reassemble. We'd like you to remember that we want you to test, learn, and scale, and hence use quick, low-cost interventions to actually test them and see how useful and how impactful your design solutions are. As you develop your proposal, also keep in mind to develop rough estimates as well as timelines. This will be very, very useful for the implementation of the design once your design does get selected. So put together a rough budget with the estimate for the tactical urbanism pilot and provide a phasing or an implementation strategy. Map your time, resources, as well as stakeholders. When you do phase, do think about starting in an area which is most impactful and ensure that you can build support from all the stakeholders in your community. Next slide, please. Next, let's go very quickly to see how can you make those fabulous design proposals and communicate them very well as well. So we'll just very quickly take you through a few points that you should consider as you start to focus on your vision that looks at reimagining the future and use visuals to support your story. Ensure that all the drawings that you create are legible to scale and they reflect the design basics that we've shared with you. Narrate the story of transformation when you're making your pitch and use that with Do that with simple graphics and use minimal text. Like no one is interested in reading, thousands of words. So make sure that your story is said in the most simplistic manner with the least amount of text, but in the most impactful way. And one of the best ways to do this is to, share your proposals by saying that this is your present condition and this is the way you plan to transform. So before and after imagery really works very well in getting the attention of your jury and of the city and the citizens that you are creating these designs for. So communicate your design in a bold, simple, legible manner. And the last part of your journey would be the participation in the evaluation process before a few of you get selected to move into the next phase, where you will be implementing the design in collaboration with the urban local body. So let's take a look at what is it that is in store for you. So once all the submissions are made to the different cities, each city would have a jury, and the jury will score and shortlist 3 to 5 entries per site. Now, these shortlisted registrants, all of you, would be invited to share a short video presentation, and we will give you guidance on how to create that. Now, this video that you create will be shared with the local community to capture their preferences. And based on your video submission, as well as the preferences of the local community, the jury will announce the final winners. So this will take into account the initial scores, your video presentation, as well as the preferences of the community. Once selected, you will be working closely with the city, also getting in more insights about about their thoughts, and then implementing the design, and maybe in some cases refining it as well. Next slide. So what is it that the jury is looking for in your design? So every city would have its own city-specific jury, with also local stakeholders being a part of that particular jury. And the jury would be looking at the originality of your design, the inclusivity of, how are you making your designs inclusive for all the different kind of stakeholders who are in your city? What is the ease of implementation of your solution, and the technical strength of your design solution as well, in the numbers that we've shared here for you. Next slide, please. So thank you so much. And if we have any questions here, we can take the next round of questions.
Yes, thank you, Ashati. Yes, like I mentioned, we do have a few questions related to the competition and the design. And we'd also shared a form with all the participants before if they want to share any questions. So we've collaborated all of the questions from there and the ones that we're receiving from the workshop right now. So we have one from Anjali. She's asking, how long will the mock-up be retained at site?
So ideally, this is a decision that the city would that the city will take. So there, like I said, there are examples for example, of Karol Bagh that has kept its temporary design for months before they've completed and converted into a permanent design. So we encourage cities to test this pilot in full spirit, and try your level best to give the citizens a feel of what that space would be. And we would encourage you to keep it as long as you can, and until you convert it into a permanent solution. But like I said, it is up to the city, and the city would be the final deciding authority to decide how long they retain the mock.
Sure, thank you. The next one, like I already asked before, is from Nikita Purohit, who's from Mumbai. Just to quickly repeat it, as a part of the submission criteria, we requested for a 200-word write-up, and she's asking whether this needs to be submitted along with the list of submissions or submitted separately.
So, Nikita, the write-up for each site has to be submitted along with the design submission for that particular site. And that's how, and that's what you would need to do.
Sure. Thank you. There's one from Prashant, the next one. He's asking, given that we're looking at low cost, is there a tentative budget we're looking at working with?
So Prashant, so I would encourage you to look at you need to be prudent, with your resources, but at the same time, see what you can do best with limited amount of money that you might have. So right now, there isn't a budget, a tentative budget that we are asking all the designers to work with. Now, in case your design is selected by the city's team will work closely with you to refine the design, and based on the costing that they would have in place as well. So currently there isn't a tentative budget, and we, like I said, we really urge you to look at tactical urbanism interventions which are low cost, which are quick in nature, and and even think quite innovatively about how can we probably reuse material from the site or the city. One example that we'd really like to share with you is, for example, the city of Aurangabad, in the other challenge that we run, which is the Cycles for Change challenge, had in fact repurposed abandoned light poles to create bollards on the street. So we really encourage both the designers and the city to think innovatively and to make the best out of the resources that they would have.
Thanks, Ashwati. The next one is from Anjali Sharma from Mysuru. She's asking, what would be the extent of detailing the design, working drawings, etc., that is required?
Sure, Angi. So, Anjali, like I said, like what we want both you and the city um, to sort of work towards is to test, learn, and scale. So here, what we're looking, we want you to do is create, be sure that you have a great vision and create conceptual designs which can be tested on the ground. Now, so in order for you to get to that stage, you should get selected. And once you do get selected, you will work with the city, you will create drawings which can be used to test the design solution on the ground. So what we want are drawings which are clear, which give clear measurements for testing the intervention on the ground. And once they are tested and once they prove successful, you can work with the city to create the drawings which are necessary for the permanent interventions.
Sure, thank you. The next one is from Srivetri. She's asking, do we need to think about the cycle lane or just for a small stretch of the street, while it's probably not as safe yet to use a cycle for the rest of the city?
So, Srivetri, so it's a very, very, valid point where it's cycling, for cycling to work in your city, you do need a network. So there's no point thinking about a cycle track or a cycle lane just for a small stretch of your street. But as your city is working on the Streets for People challenge, it is also working on a Cycles for Change challenge. So what we would ask you to do is that think, do have options where you could look at if there is space available and if there are a lot of cyclists who are actually using the space and you think there's a potential for you to get cyclists on the ground, have an option of maybe a cycle path, which probably can connect to a larger network as well. But the reason why you have a cycle path is to ensure that people and cyclists feel safe while they are riding. And if you can ensure that that particular concern is managed by traffic calming measures in your street, we would ask you to look at such interventions as well. And once your design is selected, do work with the city to understand what is their approach with the Cycle for Change challenge. Is this the area that they're looking to integrate with the Cycles for Change challenge as well? So if there's an opportunity for you to create a larger cycling network, which probably starts in the street but connects across, there's also the city can be encouraged to look at those ways of encouraging cycling in your city as well.
Thanks, Ashwati. And the last question for the day, this is from Konda Malik. He's asking, my city, so his city is facing a parking facility problem. And what they're trying to do with their design solution is make use of this government parking building, which is nearby, for their parking facilities. Along with that, they want to also provide parking on a secondary road. So he's wondering whether the secondary road can be used to provide this parking facility.
Sure, Konda. That's a really good question. And like we discussed in the presentation, parking is a localized issue. Now, when like I've shown on the slide, sometimes what happens is that there's a lot of parking on one particular street, but various streets, in and around that particular area would have no parking at all. So, for for actually tackling this issue head on, you will need to manage the parking, and it's perfectly fine to look at removing parking from a particular stretch into secondary streets that are very close by, that people can easily walk. But an important point is enforcement. So even if you provide parking on a secondary space, if either parking is not allowed on that main stretch where you're planning to manage parking, or parking on that space is higher than the secondary street, there will not be an incentive for people to park in the secondary street or use the parking facility that you have. The reason why people don't use your parking facility is that it is free to park on the street where you are having this challenge, and probably no one's enforcing it as well. So if you price parking and enforce it, people will automatically move into other locations where you would like them to park. So use pricing to benefit you in that regard.
Sure. Okay. The participants seem a bit excited. There's one more question, if I may. This last one is from Preeti Bhatia. She's wondering whether the names of the jury members will be informed to the participants for each city.
So the city will inform the participants on the jury. Like I said, each of the city will have a separate jury, and the jury members will consist of stakeholders from that specific site, but also city officials as well as technical expert. Now, the technical expert can actually be national or international. This is the broad framework that we've given the cities. But when the cities do come up with their jury members, they will definitely inform the rest of you. And Angi, I think we have Rahul Kapoor sir with us.
Yes. I was just mentioning that. So before we close, it would be our pleasure to invite Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, to deliver his address. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angi, and thank you so much, Ashwati. I'm really sorry. I was supposed to join for the introductory session, but now I'm here for the closing session without actually having the opportunity to go through the proceedings. But I think I really don't need to go through the proceedings because I've been so involved with this whole effort and all the whole work that the team at ITTP and the team at the ministry have been doing. And of course, not to forget our smart cities who are actually rolling out this challenge on ground. It's a part of the series of campaigns that we are trying to do in our cities, be it the cycles for change, be it street for people, be it the nurturing neighborhoods. And it's all about bringing about a change in our way we look at things, with the way we want our cities to be. And it basically is trying to put in that seed in our mind, the seed that will effectively lead to this kind of a transformation that we want in our cities. So I am not going to go on and talk about the wonderful things that cities have done as part of this challenge. I'm sure you would have already discussed the work that cities of Aurangabad, Kohima, Jabalpur, Karnal, Bhopal, all these cities have been doing. In fact, many of you are doing such amazing work. It keeps getting reflected through your tweets, through your social media handles. So that is why keep these regular updates flowing in. That's just for the cities so that we are up to date on what all work that you're trying to do. And of course, today I'm seeing so many participants in this webinar. I would like to thank all the students and professionals who have decided to join today for this workshop, and also to participate actively in the Streets for People Challenge competition. Believe me, it's a very unique opportunity for you to implement your own designs on the streets of your city. As students, we all have wonderful ideas that we want our city officials to imbibe or inculcate. So this is an opportunity to actually get your ideas become a part of your city design. So that's it. All the best to all of you. Till we meet again for the next webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your inspiring words as always. And with that, we have come to the end of the fourth online workshop for the Streets for People Challenge. Thank you to all participants from the city-led design competitions, all the senior officials, engineers, project management consultants, community partners, and all other stakeholders who have tuned into YouTube as well for attending this workshop. We look forward to receiving your fantastic design solutions super soon. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.